This week we read Parashat Chukat together with Balak. Once again, we're reunited. We're reunited with the Kehilas of Eretz Yisrael, Kehilas of Chutzas and Eretz Yisrael are back together after being apart for so many weeks. After Shavuos, when Shavuos came out on the second day, Shavuos came out on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael, they read Nasa. We didn't read Nasa. Now we're back together. The Parsha starts, as is well known, with the halachas of Parah Aduma, and the Mefarshim pay attention to this and say, why is the halachas of Parah Aduma found right over here? It's somewhere sandwiched in between Kairach and in between Balak, the story of Kairach, and then the Balak, and then the continuation of the story of the Yidden in the Midbar. All of a sudden we have Chukas in the middle of nowhere. Various explanations have been given, but the question itself is even deeper. We know that the Medrash teaches that in Parashas Emor and other parashas where the Torah does discuss the halachas of Tumah and Tara, the Medrash says that in every instance Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu right away how a person becomes Tumah and how a person can get out of the Tumah. A person should touch a sheretz, a person should touch one of the mentioned insects in the Torah, of the 8 insects, the 8 shrotzim. Then he goes to the mikveh, he becomes tar. A person becomes a zav, he has to go to the Mayim Chaim. There's all different types of Tumah and Tara, which the Torah right away told, and Hashem told Moshe right away. When Hashem told Moshe, there's something called Tumas Meis. When a person dies and a person comes into contact with a dead person, he becomes a Tumas Meis. Moshe says, and how does he get out of it? He says, no, I can't tell you yet. You have to wait. Much later, we're going to discuss the laws of Parah Aduma. It's going to be found in Sefer Bamidbar. Why is it that the tahara of Tumas Meis is something which is not right away understood? And we know that Shlomo Melech himself said, the halachas of Parah Aduma are so difficult to understand how it works, and so many contradictions within the laws, that even Shlomo Melech didn't understand what's so difficult. Why is the halachas of tahara of Tumas Meis? And we know that Moshe Rabbeinu did learn the halachas even before this time. It's one of the things that we learned in Mara, that Moshe Rabbeinu got even before Matan Torah. And we know that they actually brought the Parah Aduma well before the stories of Kairach and Balak, because the Medrash says that before the first Pesach in the Midbar, which was the second year, a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Yid, in order to become Tahar, in order to bring the Parah Aduma, and Moshe Rabbeinu brought the first Parah Aduma. After that, there were only 8 more. In total of history, there were only 9 times that they brought the Parah Aduma. So difficult and so complicated, the process of bringing a Parah Aduma, only 9 times they were able to bring it. Those ashes lasted, the ashes of the Parah Aduma lasted from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu till the Churban Bayis Sheni, and then we're waiting until Mashiach comes and brings the 10th one. Such a difficult to understand and comprehensive, the halachas of Parah Aduma. Says the Shem Shmuel, very beautiful thought on this whole matter. And he says that the laws of Tumah and Tara, of impurity, of purity, they're definitely connected to the situation of man. A man becomes Tomei. It's not only that he becomes Tomei in a sort of abstract way of being Tomei. It actually it's actually connected to also impurities and purity of the person himself, physical purity and impurity, and there's connections between the fact that a sheretz gives Tumah to the fact that he's Tomei in halacha. And the same thing with Tumas Meis. The fact that when a person dies and a person comes in contact with a dead person, he becomes Tomei, it has to do with death itself. Says the Shem Shmuel, there's many sicknesses in the world. And for every sickness, the doctors try and find a solution, try and find the source of the sickness, try and find an antidote to the sickness, try and find an immunization to the sickness. Now we're still going through the stages of studies of how the coronavirus comes to a person, how it affects a person, and how can we find a medicine that will work against the virus. When we're talking about there's one sickness, as the Shem Shmuel, which confounds all the doctors and all the professors, and that's depression. When a person feels depressed, you can't just there's no automatic pill, automatic medicine that heals a person from depression. Depression is something which affects a person on a very, very deep level. To get out of that depression demands an approach which is very sophisticated and very complicated. And therefore, the halachas of Tumah and Tara, which are associated with death, are also very complicated, because it deals with a very complicated part of the human psyche. The depression which affects a person, the same thing with the Tumah and the Tara, which is associated with death. Not long ago, was the first yahrzeit of the Gaon Reb Nosson Kamenetsky, Zechat Tzaddik Livracha, the son of Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky. And he wrote a story in his book, his famous book, The Making of a Gadol. He wrote a story about Reb Baruch Ber. We know Reb Baruch Ber was known to be a Gaon and a tzaddik. He was also known to be exemplary in his in his performance of the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim. When his father died, he fell into very deep depression. He felt guilty for the fact that he didn't do enough. And all the Rabbanim and all of his colleagues came to try and calm him down and try to take him out, and he wouldn't leave and the depression was affecting him in a very, very deep way. It was affecting his ability to function as a Rosh Hashiva, to function as a Rav, and nobody was able to shake him out of it. And everybody told him, what are you talking about? Of course you did enough. You're a Baruch. Everybody knows how much you cared for your father, and of course it's not your fault, and it's death, and he wouldn't get out of it. Until the Chafetz Chaim came and spoke to him, and the Chafetz Chaim managed to get him out of his depression. They asked the Chafetz Chaim, what did you tell him? What did you tell Baruch Ber to get him out of his depression? And Chafetz Chaim said, I understood that any type of logic would not help. To get a person out of such a depression, the person feels terrible thing, the person feels guilty about the death of a loved one, just telling him, no, it's not true, you did everything you can, that doesn't help. He said, I had to come with a completely different tact. And I said, you know what, Baruch Ber, you're right, you're guilty, it's your fault. But Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us tshuva. Tshuva changes a person. A person before tshuva and a person after tshuva is two completely different people. And yes, there are Baruch Ber before tshuva, maybe was a person who was guilty in some way, caused the death of his father. But do tshuva and you'll be a new person, you'll be a new Baruch Ber. That was able to snap Baruch Ber out of it. Baruch Ber on his level was able to understand the Chafetz Chaim's words. The story is a story in of itself, but what we see from here, the Chafetz Chaim also understood this that the Shem Shmuel is teaching us, that to deal with a person, if a person himself, chas v'shalom, is feeling depressed, a person close to, somebody close to us is feeling depression, it's not enough to come with words and tell them, no, it's not your fault, what are you thinking? Logic doesn't always help when a person is found in a depression. This is the lesson of the Torah of the Paraduma. It takes a much deeper and a much more complicated approach. May Hashem bench us that we should never know the feeling of depression, and we should never know this terrible feeling of depression, but if we do, or if we find somebody else, we should realize that it has to be dealt with on a very deep and a very, 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 very complicated approach in order to be able to deal with ourselves on this level and be able to deal with people around us who are feeling this way. May Hashem save us from all sicknesses, and especially illnesses that are associated with depression, that are associated with the feelings of despair in a person. This has been a short thought on Parashat Chukat Balak. Good Shabbos.